So I want to talk for a few minutes about self-referral and its meaning in different states of consciousness, because we know knowledge is different in different states of consciousness. We have heard that the world appears different in different states of consciousness. And the same is true for that word self-referral. In waking state of consciousness, when the attention flows outward and we are caught up in the objects of perceptions, there's basically no self-referral. There's a loss of self-awareness. We're completely taken in by what our life circumstances are, and that's what it is. That's what we got. Dreaming, same situation. In sleep, nothing. When I start transcending, there's the process of self-referral that starts. I turn inward, away from the objects of perception, away from processes of thinking or feeling. I'm just letting go of everything, and what's left is self-referral consciousness that only knows itself, and therefore it's a state of unboundedness, without limits, without boundaries, freedom, samadhi, nirvana, emptiness, shunya. And then from that state, self-referral grows until you are able to be active in day-to-day life without ever forgetting, without ever losing that awareness of that inner quality of beingness, unboundedness. And so you have self-referral going on, and the world is going on the outside, but it's not shaking you, it's not affecting you. It's in a certain way, this witnessing value that happens in cosmic consciousness. You are almost a witness to your activity. The activity is happening, but you're not really the one who is doing it. It just happens, just like you breathe without voluntarily making an effort to breathe. Breathing just happens naturally. Your heartbeat just happens naturally. So in cosmic consciousness, your actions just happen naturally in the way that is the most natural, effortless way, spontaneous way, but you're not involved in it. You don't have the attachment to them. There's a certain separation, a gap between them. There's self-referral, and there's the object activity and the objects going on. And then as you go in God consciousness, you begin to recognize that in the perception of the activity, there's a charm, there's a beauty, there's something there that you recognize as being a part of yourself. And then in unity consciousness, the beautiful culmination of that development of self-referral is that everything, all activity, all perception, everything that you are engaged in becomes a means to know yourself, becomes a means to embrace yourself, becomes a means to recognize yourself in all. And then in that state of consciousness, everything is self-referral. There is no more object referral state. Everything became a self-referral experience. Every interaction, joy and suffering. I talked to a friend of mine. He has arthritis and pain in his knee and hip. And he said to me, I feel the pain, and sometimes it's very strong, but it feels blissful. It's like it's an experience, but it stirs beingness. It stirs the unbounded ocean of being. It stirs the self and is experienced as bliss, as joy. So the boundary of pain that you were a victim in waking state of consciousness, and that was all, it dominated your being. When you have any discomfort in unity consciousness, it is there, but it's experienced in terms of a phenomenon occurring in the ocean of your being, in the infinite existence of your own being. And that's why in unity consciousness, There's no fear of death, because the fear of death can only be there when there are two, when there's me and another, when there is a separation, when there's duality. With that, fear arises. But when I experience life as a continuum, there's nothing outside of my experience of existence, then there's nothing to be afraid of. And everything, even the death, will be just a phenomenological transition. It will be just a phenomenon of dropping the body, of leaving this body and moving on. Death is like a train that disappears in a tunnel in the mountains. You can't see it anymore, it's gone. Now, did the train stop? Did the train disappear? Did the train dissolve? No. Only I, from my vantage point, can't see the train anymore. It left. And so I had this experience with the death of several of my family members that I was witnessing and present to. Especially I remember as a 17-year-old, my grandma died in the nursing home, and we got the news, and my mother and I rushed in to her room. And as I entered the room of Omi, as I called her, my grandma Omi, I looked at her lying in the bed, and it was just like a bag, an empty mask. It was just like a caricature. It was just, I recognized, yeah, that's kind of what Omi looks like. But anything that I knew about Omi, her aliveness, her smile, her love, there was nothing there. It was just an empty bag, like a house that has been vacated, empty. So I saw very clearly at that age that we are not the body. And when the time comes to leave, the soul, the consciousness, the awareness, the light of our soul that gives life to this body just moves on, and the body falls apart and returns to the earth. So when you have an experience of somebody dying, don't look at the body and say, oh my God, oh, why are you, well, what? Don't talk to the body as if that's the person. No, that's just a shell. It's just a husk that is left. And the one that you loved is not in there anymore. But it often happens that when the loved ones leave, there's a period of transition that they go through on the other side. And in that period of transition, they often check in. They hang around for a while, basically around their family, around friends, loved ones. They hang around. They don't necessarily leave just right away. And when you are sensitive enough in your heart, you can feel their presence connecting with you. And in my death and grief counseling that I'm doing, it has been often my experience that the greatest mistake that people make that lose a loved one is when I talk to them, they have the experience that a vivid experience of that person being there right with them. And then they start crying and bawling, oh God, I miss you so much. Oh, it's terrible. How can I live without you? And they think it's a memory that they are having, a memory of their loved ones. And that memory tells them, oh, he's gone. And that memory is so, for them, that experience is so intense, so real, that they feel like, oh my God, this is my loss. How can I live with that loss? The truth, however, is that what they think is a memory is actually the soul connecting with their soul and communicating to their heart and saying, I love you. I'm standing right next to you. I shower you with light and love. And I just wanted to communicate that to you. Let you feel that. Let you feel the joy and the light that I feel. And it's just that switch. When people get it, and they say, thank you. And then the next time it happens that they have this experience with their loved ones, they have a smile on their face and they say, yes, thank you for visiting with me. And oh, it's so beautiful to be in your presence again and to just feel, even if it's just for a moment. So life is eternal. There's no beginning and there's no end to life. It's like, when you have a sphere, when you have a ball, can you point to a point on the ball where the ball begins, where the sphere begins and where the spheres end? No, everything in life is circular. Everything in life comes around and comes around and again comes around. So when the train disappears in the tunnel, in the mountains, and you don't see it anymore, that's not the end of the train. It continues and it goes places that you have never been, perhaps. And you have no idea. And so it's important when loved ones die to assure them, to remind them to feel the presence of God around them, to support them in their orientation, because soon they will leave and they have to leave by themselves. Nobody will go with them, right? So you come alone and you go alone. And so you want to create a supportive environment so that they are at peace and all the words that need to be spoken are spoken, everything is forgiven, love is shared, and then in that peaceful atmosphere, they can focus on the last moments before the soul will exit the body, and they can be fully present to that. Because if you're peaceful and fully present to exiting your body, then the trajectory in which your soul moves, just like a rocket, if it's oriented properly as it takes off, it reaches where it needs to go. And when you die all upset and there's anger and there's arguments around you and whatever, that energy affects the direction in which your soul will move, because it doesn't come from a place of harmony and peace and inner tranquility. So it's important to support loved ones when they go through that phase so that they reach the highest levels of existence to continue their journey on the other side. But I realized that I kind of was completely sliding into another topic that is a world unto itself. And so we should just stay with the living and focus on what we can do while we are alive to fully develop our consciousness and radiate love and light to everyone around us.